I feel so bad for making you shut off your heater. I'm
Dude,
sorry.
It's cold. It's so cold down here.
It was really making some bad background noise. I'm sorry.
I know. And I said I wasn't going to use a space heater, but today is like exceptionally cold, dude.
Yeah, it's
like I almost
now.
came down with the winter jacket on, but I chose not to and just put on the space heater.
Well, if you do need to leave at some point, put on a winter jacket. Feel free.
No, I'll be okay.
Yeah, dude, it's freezing. I was out for my my post daycare walk with Rylan and yeah, I had a lot of layers on. I had like a hoodie, a vest, puffy over that, and like full mittens and hat, and I got like Rylan. Not Ryan.
Who's Ryan? Ryan, dude?
Who's Ryan? Who's Ryan?
Just carrying around some dude named Ryan.
Yeah. I had to put Ryan in some layers. He was so cold. I had to put...
Poor Ryan.
I think Rylan was in like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 layers. She had like a shirt, like a tank top, a shirt, like a sweatshirt, and then a little fleece shirt. And we had another winter jacket over that with like mittens and hat and bundle her all up, some heavy winter boots, but... Very good. Body heat's a good thing. And she was still sprinting through the snow like a maniac, so I think she was happy.
Body heat's a good thing, and I don't have any of it right now.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the PUDs Podcast.
I'm waiting for you to ask me what's up.
Am I that predictable?
Yeah, but I feel like I always come in at the same time that you do, so I just was giving it to you this time.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I guess that is usually what we do. So let's do it. What's up, buddy?
What's up, dude?
Getting back from a wonderful long weekend up north. Getting back into the swing of the work week.
I know.
We're all unpacked and stuff. We had a lot of fun up there. Just trying to stay warm, I guess, too.
Yeah, you guys were adventuring, dude. That was a awesome looking long weekend that you guys took.
Yeah, we had fun. Hiking adventures aside, which we'll get into later. Drove up, and first thing I wanted to touch upon on Thursday night is we made really good time driving up there, and we were able to get out sort of in the afternoon. And crashed our boys Nick Higgins and James Leitner running the Lincoln 100 and was able to join them for a lap. And Philip Carcia was also there, so I got to see him for a bit. Saw Lynn, got to meet Foghat, which was sick. All super nice people. And there was a little tent basically set up kind of in North Woodstock on I guess that's probably Route 3A. As part of that whole loop they were doing. And I figured I saw the tent around 9:30 at night, so I figured it must be them. Because I don't know who else would be out in the snow, just hanging out.
With a tent.
And yeah, man, it was awesome. It was something to see. I think I was mentioning to you, but it's definitely something I will not forget. Seeing sort of the determination and just this whole effort that these guys were putting in. I mean, we heard about it a couple episodes ago, but yeah, they're the real deal. I think I literally texted you that, and it was so great to see them going for it in honor of Chris Roma and raising money for Mission Clean Water. And big congrats to both of them. I know James ended up bowing out a little bit early, I think around the 24-hour mark. Was having some issues with the cold, and I can vouch for the fact that it was, even for the lap I did, it was pretty cold. It was also snowing that night, which wasn't fantastic, kind of making everybody feel like a snowman. But yeah, Nick pushed through and got it done. I believe around 32 hours he finished it finally. So man, hats off to those guys. I was super glad to be able to crash for a lap and chat with them a little bit and join in before heading to bed and waking up for work the next day for a half day. So
hats off to those guys for sure. Congratulations to Nick and James for what they accomplished out there, because it was definitely an amazing feat in its own to even get out there and be running, let alone 100 miles. And hats off to you, Nick, for going out there and
Thanks,
putting your money where your mouth is and really partaking in this thing that not only do we promote it and we kind of put the word out there about it on the podcast, but it's part of the community too. It's what we do. So, and you show that's what you do. And I thought that was awesome, dude. I was so proud of you when you when I found out that you ran with them. I was like, wow, this guy. I love this boy.
Yeah, I mean, probably a lot of people know I do run to basically stay in shape for hiking around here, but they were definitely running a fairly moderate pace given the snow and the fact that, they were running 100 miles over 24 hours was the goal.
Right.
But it was great to hang out. I chatted with Phil a little bit about his Arizona trail trek. And chatted with both of them a little bit. And before I knew it, sort of the lap was over and shot some pictures of them. Fortunately, Phil actually had like a sort of headlamp on, like we all did, but he also had like a waist sort of lamp on. And he actually was able to light up some of the people in the scenes for basically had some exposure so I could take some pictures. Because I did not have a flash. So for anybody that saw those pictures, like I did edit them a little bit, but it was super dark where it was. Like they had some lamps and lanterns and stuff hanging around sort of the aid station, but it was possible because Phil was actually shining light and everything was bright. It was pretty dark, I can assure you, where they were.
Yeah. And if you haven't given yet, give to Mission Clean Water.
Yep. Yeah, I believe you can still find it at missioncleanwater.org/ I think Lincoln 100 was the link.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll continue to link that. I know they're really close. I think they hit around 7,000-ish out of 10,000 last time I checked.
Yeah, I think they're over 8,000 now.
Yeah, it was enough to fund another project. I know that. So
that's awesome.
That's fantastic. That's what they were going to do, and I'm sure Chris would be proud, to say the least.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Cool. So yeah, we did that on Thursday. Had a smooth ride up. Friday worked a little bit, got over to Loon, did a half day of skiing, or I should say I snowboard, ash skis, so we kind of swapped off with Rylan, and that was super fun, though. The weather was really nice and everything, and I got to take Rylan and just kind of play in the snow around the base of the ski lodge, so she had a blast. She had a blast, and Saturday got out hiking, which we'll talk about, and then Sunday got out hiking again, but did Arethusa Falls with the family, which is a nice kind of family hike. I think it's around 3 miles and about 1,000 feet round trip to one of the tallest waterfalls. I believe it's considered the tallest waterfall accessible by trail in New Hampshire. So it's like between 125 and 100 feet tall. It was all frozen and stuff, and we were watching the ice climbers there. That was a good time. I shot some video of that, so there'll probably be some stuff going on later. And I'll share that out.
Sick.
And later on Sunday, we checked out the ice castles, which mixed feelings on the ice castles. I think Rylan had fun, but she was spent by the end. And for $30 or whatever it was to get in, like it's kind of frankly a shit show. In my opinion, it was something to see. I don't know if we take Rylan until she was a little bit older. She kind of was freaking out by the end. I think it's just overly stimulated, probably a little tired too from just not napping as much. And it was just a mess. It was, in my opinion, it was just really poorly organized. There wasn't really a lot of signs showing you where to park and how to get out of there from parking. And clearly they're just making money hand over fist because it didn't seem like anybody really cared. And one thing to note too, that if you are thinking of going, and given this is a holiday weekend, so take my opinion with what you will in our experience, but if you buy tickets in advance, it actually didn't get you in early or anything. You still had to wait in line with people that were just buying tickets there, which to me makes no sense. Like usually most venues or anything, they'll have someone scanning QR codes, which you get, and kind of letting you in like as part of the thing. But yeah, so we had to wait like probably 10 to 15 minutes before we even got into the thing. So you're just standing there in the cold, kind of waiting to get in. So it was kind of a mess. Really pretty, and the ice castles were impressive. But again, I'm not in a rush to get back there anytime soon. I think when Rylan's a little bit bigger and can do some of the ice slides and some things like that, we'll go back again. But it was just kind of poorly organized, I think.
We hit the ice castles in their peak, like right before they got super popular.
Yeah, me and Ash were reminiscing, but I don't know if anybody remembers or went to the ice castles when they were much less crazy. Like, and that was a holiday weekend that we were up there too, way back when.
Yeah,
but they
I
used
think
to
it was actually the same. I think it was
right.
also Martin Luther King weekend.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably circa what, like
2017, 16.
Yeah, before
15,
even more than that. But they used to actually be at the base of Loon, and then they moved them, I think, to where the Hobo Railroad is, and now they're kind of in like the Woodstock, like on the end of the Kank. But yeah, it's kind of changed a lot. It's gotten a lot bigger.
Is it just like a free for all? Like they let all these people in, and just a bunch of people.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, they have some concession stands. The porta potties were out of control. Like I used one, and I told Ash, I'm like, unless you have to go really bad, probably just wait till we get back to the place we're staying at.
Dude. That's a shame.
It was kind of a mess. But yeah, just a free for all. You go in there. There's nobody really directing a path of traffic or anything like that. Yeah, it was just a lot, man. Like I don't know, people are going to be like, I love the ice castles. Well, you can keep the ice castle experience. I think I think for a bit, for me with almost a 2.5-year-old, it was kind of a lot. Yeah. It was much more peaceful hiking to Arethusa Falls earlier that day.
Oh yeah, well I would imagine.
Yeah,
I would imagine, but
yeah, overall, I mean, me being a little bit salty about the ice castle experience, it was a great time. We had an easy ride up, easy ride back. It snowed kind of on and off the whole time. Weather was kind of cloudy and cold, but not nearly as cold as it got earlier this week. So that was kind of nice especially for taking the little one out and letting her play outside and whatnot. We weren't like too worried about her being like freezing cold as long as we layered up and whatnot. So
nice.
Yeah, man, it was a great time. What have you been up to, Mr. New Mazda?
I had a feeling you were going to bring up the Mazda. Yeah. But yeah, I've been driving around the Mazda. No, man, I just we really had a good chance to enjoy the weekend. We got some, I don't know how you guys made out over there in Rehoboth, but we got about 4 inches, a little more, 4 inches, 5 inches of snow.
Probably about the same, something like that.
Yeah, so that was Sunday going into Martin Luther King Day on Monday. And every year, Melissa puts on, well, through the college, through the Multicultural Student Center at Bristol Community College, she puts on a Martin Luther King breakfast for the community. So she's done that every year for the past, like, I don't even know, dude, 6 years, 7 years. So as she was away in that morning, me and Jeremiah shoveled the driveway and then did some sledding. And I just bundled up the baby in like so many layers and blankets, dude, and like put her in her car seat in the stroller. And then she just slept. Like, she was so warm, dude. She just slept. I picked her up. She was like a hot potato. I'm like, geez, I was worried about you being too cold. I think you might be too hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this, I mean, you've been in the yard. We have a nice little hill back here. And it's like a perfect sledding hill.
Nice.
Like, it's like just short enough and steep enough that like you get a good little ride, but you don't have to walk back up like forever. So Jeremiah probably went up and down about 50 times. It was so much fun.
Excellent.
So we really took advantage of the snow day, and we spent probably like 4 or 5 hours out there in total. It was great.
Cool, man. Yeah, we did a little bit of playing in the snow when we got home, but I was glad the roads really weren't too bad. It was a little slow going in New Hampshire Sunday into Monday because it did snow up there, but not bad at all. Yeah, no,
the roads were great. The roads were fine. It's now that it's all like it's stayed super cold, but the sun's been out. There's like ice everywhere. There's ice everywhere. So it's a little bit. Yeah, it really is treacherous, dude. I had to put out my trash on Monday night and like slipping and sliding down the road.
Try not to die.
Yeah, just sliding around, doing my slippers. Like, whoa. But yeah, man, no, it was a good weekend. Good opportunity to relax and enjoy some time with the family. So it was real cool, man. So now it's on to what's the next holiday?
President's Day.
President's Day, yeah, President's Day.
February.
Looking forward to that.
Word.
You ready to get into the music moment?
Yeah, man, let's do it. I got a little tidbit in this one I think you're going to like tonight.
A tidbit?
Yeah, a little tidbit.
I am a fan of a tidbit.
A little crumb, if you will.
No cheeses for us Mises.
Little something to snack on. I'm not throwing any more coal on that fire for you down there.
It's cold. I need it.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Nick's Music Moment is brought to you by Impact Botanicals. Ready to harness the power of plants and revolutionize your body care routine? Look no further than Impact Botanicals. We're thrilled to recommend their Working Hands Balm and Recovery Aid for all your skin and muscle care needs. If you're dealing with dry, cracked, or calloused skin, the Working Hands Balm is your new best friend. Using the healing power of comfrey and calendula, it quickly restores your skin to its best condition and is ideal for those of us who are tough on our equipment. But that's not all. For those sore muscles and joints after a strenuous day, Recovery Aid is here to help. This complex formula is packed with anti-inflammatory herbs that repair damaged tissue and expedite your recovery. Best of all, it's CBD-free and most effective when used regularly. Impact Botanicals products are not just good for you, they're good for the planet too. All their products are organic, produced with solar power, and with every purchase, they remove a pound of plastic from nature and convert it into energy. So if you're ready to transform your body care routine, check out Impact Botanicals today at myimpactbotanicals.com and use promo code PUDS, that's PUDS, for 20% off your order. That's myimpactbotanicals.com, promo code PUDS, PUDS, for 20% off your order.
All right, so for tonight's Nick's Music Moment, I have the album Broken Bells by the band Broken Bells from back in 2010. So I believe my buddy Gerard, who lives on the West Coast now, shout out to Gerard, I know he's a friend of the podcast, back in like maybe late high school, early college years, his brother Martin, his oldest brother, was always turning us on to like different music. And yeah, we used to pretty much just get some weed and go in the car and just listen to albums and stuff, to be completely frank. So I think many people probably did. And this is one of those albums that we used to do that to a lot. And it's not just the cannabis that was making it sound good. In my opinion, the album still really holds up quite well. I was reminded of it, I guess just this week. I don't know if it was like a memory or something came up on Facebook, but I was like, oh yeah, that album was good. I think maybe I shared it in a story from like a while back or whatever. I was like, oh, it's been a while since I've listened to this, so I was kind of spinning it a little bit on my run today. But Broken Bells is an American indie rock band comprised of artist-producer Brian Burton, who's also known and more popularly known as Danger Mouse, and James Mercer, who's the lead vocalist and guitarist for the indie rock band The Shins, which people are probably familiar with, or maybe not, I don't know. They were a big band when I was in high school, but that's saying a lot since it was a while ago, and that's when they had some songs on the movie Garden State soundtrack and whatnot. But anyways, they pretty much write as a duo, but they're joined by a couple other different people live to sort of fill out the band. And Danger Mouse produced the Grey album by Jay-Z in 2004, and he kind of got famous from that. So he's a producer, songwriter, musician. But I thought this was kind of cool, and Josh would definitely know some of these artists. So he actually formed Nars Barkley with CeeLo Green, which I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
That was him and Danger Mouse. I don't know who else was in Nars Barkley. He also is known for producing a bunch of different artists' famous albums, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and one of Josh's favorite bands, the Gorillaz. So their second album, Demon Days, was produced by Danger Mouse.
Wow.
So the same dude that's basically half of Broken Bells. So
wow, that's like one of their best albums too.
Yeah, they had mentioned it was a pretty long list to go through all the albums that he's produced like since 2004 and the Grey album. I wasn't gonna name all of them. You can go down that rabbit hole if you choose to. It's kind of cool though when like I would have had no idea that was the same guy that was. Yeah. It makes sense if you listen to the album. I think the way it's produced, and some of I don't know the aura of it like definitely falls in the same vein of kind of how the Gorillaz sound. Obviously, it's a different artist, so it sounds different. But I think just the way it's produced, definitely there's some similarities there. So James Mercer is actually the founder and the original and the current only original member left of the Shins. Like I said, I really like them back like high school, college age. Not going to say too much about them. If you want to listen to the Shins, you can. I think they're just kind of a generally good indie band. So Broken Bells formed in 2009 after the pair met at the Rock Slide Festival in 2004. They were apparently really big fans of each other's work, so they were like stoked when they met each other. And I guess kind of over the years started talking, and they were like, hey, we should make music together, which I was thinking must be interesting because they're like, I like your stuff, you like my stuff, like we should probably like work together.
Just do it together.
Yeah, like let's do it together and kind of see what happens, which I'm sure doesn't always work out because there's egos and like creative differences and things like that, but it's kind of cool when things like that work out. And this was their debut album. They do have another EP after this, and I think 2 full albums that have come out. I actually haven't listened to their newest album that came out in 2022, but I'm going to have to go back and listen to that now after doing my research today. Some of my favorite songs off this album are The High Road, The Ghost Inside, and The Mall in Misery. The whole thing front to back is a super solid album. I really enjoy it. It's just really like, it's got kind of like funky, like, I don't know, rock synth. It's not like a super like hard driving album or anything. It's like, I would say it's quite the opposite compared to like the Queens of the Stone Age kick I've sort of been on, which is maybe why it's sounding good to my ears and why I'm just kind of going back down this vibe today. Like it was a good album to just sort of be doing a chill run to and trying not to like die on the ice that you were mentioning earlier. That's everywhere.
Are you running in spikes?
No. Oh, I do have some little spike things, like they're not like yak tracks, but like you gave me like a couple of years ago at this point that I'll use sometimes. Yeah. The only thing that's tough with those is if you're going between like asphalts and ice, like it just is really tough sometimes. Like it hurts to run on pavement in those for a long amount of time. But yeah, man, that's the album Broken Bells by Broken Bells. Check it out.
Check out Broken Bells.
Yeah.
I got nothing, Nick.
You got nothing?
I got nothing.
Okay, man. That's all right.
Let's get into the main topic.
Yeah, let's do it, buddy.
Let's do
it. All right, man. So I've got my notes ready. Josh can see. I got my paper. Those of you that are watching on YouTube at PUDs_podcast.
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 On YouTube.
You can see my little note sheet. I do some note sheets when we get really into the hiking weeds. So I got my mileage and my elevation gain stats, but I've been basically working through the remainder of my 4,000 footers this winter, hoping to finish because I only had 13 left when we began. I've been fortunate to get up. I would say I've also been really stretching this year as far as trying to wake up early and do like multiple things and get back at reasonable times. So it has not been without some effort getting up, in addition to Ash, quote unquote, probably letting me get up north and getting out sort of on my own. So yeah, it's been a thing.
I bet, dude.
So I think where we last left off, I mean, I kind of talked about sort of, that was when we were talking about your Waterville Valley trip, and I had gotten up to the Osceolas and bagged those in on Carrigan. So next in line, we're going to throw it back to Saturday, January 4th, and I headed up to Carter Dome. So more or less because of the logistics and just the time of driving up to Pinkham Notch and the Route 16 area, I just have a lot left in that area. I started this season having isolation left, which I still got. So I've got isolation and the bonds left, which I'll touch upon again at the end of this episode, and how I ended up with isolation and the bonds left. But I basically had the Wildcats, the Carters, isolation, sort of that whole area, excuse me, of Route 16 left. And a lot of it's just because it's a long drive. Like from our house, like without traffic, it's tough to get to a lot of these trailheads in less than 3.5 hours, if not more like 3 hours and 40 minutes. So it's just kind of a haul, and kind of why I think I've ended up with leaving them sort of for last. So I was looking at the weather conditions, and this day in particular, I think a lot of people probably hasn't slipped memory. Granted, we've had just another really cold stretch this week, but it was cold as whatever, cold as fuck, like whatever you want to call it. It was very cold. It was cold. To bleep me there. Well,
pulled out all the stops.
Yeah, it was really cold. I definitely didn't want to do something that was completely exposed. Not that I've got a lot of exposed summits left, but I think the weather forecast for that day, and it ended up being a little bit colder than the forecast. When I was looking, like checking, like when I got home, I was curious what NOAA and weather.gov was reporting. But I believe at the point forecast they had for Carter Dome, which was actually slightly lower elevation wise than the summit, so you can always sort of check the height in feet that those point forecasts are at. The standing temperature was only supposed to get up to around -1 degrees, and the wind chill was right around -30 degrees all day with like a 25 to 30 mile per hour wind, so out of the northwest. Yeah, that's really cold. I would say, I think I gotta say, I mean, I've been out, like I had a cold day when I did Eisenhower and Pierce for the winter. I think this beat it out just because I felt colder than that day, and I really wasn't even completely exposed for that long. Like Carter Dome's really mostly in the trees. You kind of get up into some views on some snowdrifts, and I'll share some pictures of all these hikes out later, and I have been just sort of in our story. But yeah, man, it was ridiculously cold. So the most common way, in the way that I decided to approach Carter Dome, was to head up the 19-mile Brook trailhead from Route 16, which I'm like best friends with this trail or enemies with it now. I just keep hitting it with inherently the way that these peaks are arranged that I had left. You end up kind of on the same trails quite a bit. So headed up to the 19-mile Brook trailhead. I think I got there maybe around like 9. I'm trying to think. I think it was around like maybe 8:30ish. I was gonna say 9, but I think it was probably around like 8:30 by the time I finally got going. And yeah, it was super cold. I believe at the trailhead it was around 9 or 10 degrees, something like that, just standing there in Pinkham Notch. So that was pretty nippy. Got everything ready, ripped open my hand warmers and got everything really arranged in my pack so that I was ready to try to roll and like be able to move quickly and put layers on if I needed to. This whole route, basically you'll take 19-mile Brook just up to the Carter Dome Trail, and you'll follow that basically all the way up to the summit of Carter Dome. It splits off in an area called Zeta Pass. That's basically this little pass where there's a junction of the Carter Dome Trail and the Carter Mariah Trail. You can optionally go over Mount Height, which has fantastic views. It's actually a completely exposed summit, not a 4,000 footer. It sort of loops off of Carter Dome. Did not do it on this day because number one, it wasn't broken out, and number two, I think you'd have to be psychotic. I know there were people out there hiking that I saw on Facebook, but at least I shouldn't say psychotic, but it was over what I'm willing. We talk about risk tolerance. Like it was unnecessary to be exposed on that day unless you really wanted to and you really had your ducks in a row and experience in going out. And I just was not comfortable doing that solo. So the hike round trip for stats, 10 miles and 3,350 feet of elevation gain. If you do want to add Mount Height on this, it only adds like 0.2 miles additional, but it does add 150 feet of gain. So if you do that in the summer or another time of year or a much nicer day in winter, highly recommend checking out Mount Height. It's got really, really fantastic views. See what I got.
I love how you said a much nicer day in winter.
A much nicer day, yeah. Not as cold, or if you just had way more layers and you had more of a tolerance to be out that cold. I ended up being able to use spikes the entire way. There isn't a lot of snow, I'd say, even like even being up this past weekend down low in New Hampshire. There's a lot of snow up high. I actually was able to get away without using snowshoes, but because of how we had sort of rain and stuff up there and it froze over, there was a lot of snow as I got above Zeta Pass for the final approach to Carter Dome, but it was almost like walking on like just, I don't know, frozen concrete blocks. Like there was maybe like 3 or 4 inches of fresh powder on top of that. I kind of was able to do it without really post-holing too much. I didn't need to break out my snowshoes, but more or less ran up to Carter Dome as quickly as possible and pretty much got back down to Zeta Pass because it was just freezing. And kind of had an unusual thing happen where normally you think of like, oh, I'm going down and it's going to be colder, or sorry, you're going to get out of the cold and you're going to get a little bit warmer. But immediately as I turned around into that northwest wind, and even though I was just barely exposed within the trees, the wind was absolutely freezing. I had 2 hand warmers in each of my mittens with Leitner gloves on, and my hands were still getting cold coming down. So that it was
That's insane.
Pretty legit. Had goggles on and sort of just a balaclava. My balaclava is like a sort of a magnetic one where you can actually pull down the face off it. And I had something happen which I've never had happen before, which is just from the condensation, because how cold it was, the magnetic part actually froze shut. So I actually had to rip it off at Zeta Pass, and I didn't do any damage to it. Like it was fine, but it was like, I'm like, why is it like not releasing? And I'm like, oh, it's frosted from the condensation.
No
so like
way.
Literally like ripping it off my face.
My word.
Yeah, dude, it was wild.
Coldest day you've ever hiked?
I think so, yeah. In retrospect, I think just with how I felt, could have wore some more. Again, a lot of times I just feel like too I was moving pretty quickly. I did the whole thing in probably about 4.5-ish hours. And that included just stopping for food at Zeta Pass quick, just scarf down some Reese's and some water, more just because I wasn't particularly hungry, but I'm like, I should eat something. It's cold and my body probably just needs a little bit of fuel.
Right.
But yeah, I got back down to Zeta Pass, actually crossed a group of hikers that I actually jumped on the way up, like as in just past them. And they looked like they were a little bit younger, and I think I did deter them from actually continuing on to Carter Dome. I could just tell they didn't have shells or anything. They're asking me like, how cold is it up there? And I'm like, it's very cold. Like, unless you guys have shells and something to put over your face, like I think it's definitely a day where you probably could have gotten frostbite on your nose. If you weren't covered up, you probably wouldn't have noticed until you were coming down later and you're like, hey, I can't feel my nose for the next 3 hours. But yeah, there was some really biting wind chill. Yeah, man. And I crossed some other gritters that were actually going across the whole ridge. And they brought up a valid point too, where, and this is just the experience of people who grid, but they're like, oh, like they actually came up from the Imp Trail and we're going basically across the ridge north to south. And they had mentioned that, oh, like, yeah, the winds at our backs. And I'm like, I didn't even think of that on a day. And on a day like that, where it's that cold, like I think it makes a significant difference whether you've got the wind in your face the whole time or not.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, like I was mentioning, I noticed immediately as I began descending Carter Dome that it felt much colder. So I that's kind of a veteran move, and that's something I guess I'll pay more attention to in the winter if I choose to go on a day like that again. Yeah, and I got to say, just reflecting, I've been talking about the cold this entire hike, but I think knowing that forecast with me personally, I don't think I'd really seek to go out in anything colder than that. If it was forecasted, like it just takes and to me, it's like you can do it. And I mean, I crossed, and shout out to Christian Hikes the Whites. I crossed him on the way down, and he was actually going up and bagged all 3 of the Carters overnight, and I'm sure he had all the layers and was moving pretty good. I'm sure to get it done. So you can get it done, but to me, the enjoyability factor just really goes down when you're like, I need to keep moving or I'm going to freeze and get hypothermia or something like that. Like it maybe not that quickly, but you really got to pay attention to what you're doing out there. And I've been out in a good amount of cold weather. Like I said, I'm by no means a veteran winter hiker. I'm still plugging through just my initial round of the winter 48, but it was definitely a learning experience. Kind of thanked Mother Nature a little bit for, I just got to poke out and feel what that wind chill felt like for a little bit. And that was plenty enough for me for that day. I thought about maybe bagging middle and south, but I'm like, it's so cold. I was making good time. I'm like, I was able to get home, I think that day for like 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like that, and get home for dinner and everything and hang out. So got back down, called it a day, safe, warm. It was a good deal. So that made for winter peak number 39 of the winter 48. So next, this was kind of an adventure. So this goes back to sort of the Mike from SLASR Podcast hiking group and the great group of guys that I've gotten to know. No, not known. I've known them, I guess now. But it goes
You've
back.
Known them?
Yeah, I've known them. I don't know what
intimately.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. I'm trying to read my notes and ruminate at the same time. Josh was like, "What the hell are you trying to say?"
You've known them?
You've known them?
That's like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I haven't known a woman yet.
Hey now.
Hey now.
You have 2 kids.
Hey now.
Hey now. Anyways. Yeah, it goes back to they've done a Zealand Falls hut overnight before, and they actually did this last year as part of Mike's quest to finish the Winter 48. A lot of people choose to do this too, but it's not totally uncommon to stay at Zealand Falls hut and then actually use that as a jumping off point for the bonds. Kind of makes it nice where you can kind of hike in with your gear, do an overnight there, and then wake up early and sort of tackle the bonds in the morning. So we were actually in the Adirondacks when he did that last year, and they hit some like legit full conditions, I think, going across Bond Cliff. Definitely something you need a couple people for, as usually that area gets windblown and stuff. So long story short, he was looking to go up there again, but do something a little bit more chill, a little bit more relaxed, kind of do an overnight. And Peter was actually looking to tackle South Hale the next day after we did the overnight, which is on the New Hampshire 100 highest list, which we actually just talked about with Dave. So that was kind of a little tie back to the New Hampshire 100 highest with Dave. But yeah, that was kind of the loose plans, and I was able to join them. So if you do want to stay at the AMC huts in the winter, there's 3 of the huts that stay open in the winter. Most of them close. You have Zealand Falls hut, sort of in the Crawford, Pemmy area. or I should say like the, I guess, Zealand Pemi area, the end of Zealand Road, you get in from that side. Then you've got Lonesome Lake, that's over kind of the west side with the Kinsmans and in the Cannon area, the west side of Franconia Notch. And then you've got Carter Notch Hut, which is more or less in between sort of the Wildcats and Carter Dome. So you can stay at those three. It's like, I believe it's around $30 either way, but it's a little bit cheaper if you're an AMC member. Couple differences with the huts in the winter from the other times of year. And full disclosure, this is my first hut stay. I have not stayed at the huts in the summer. I have been to the huts in the summer and visited them, but it's my understanding it's sort of an entirely different experience. They provide meals and food and I guess sort of crew entertainment and things like that. It's a lot different in the winter. Super fortunate, like Peter actually emailed me ahead of time kind of with a just general summary of what to expect doing a winter hut overnight, from like food that he brings to like like sleeping bags and kind of how cold it was going to be to what to expect. And in a nutshell, they have a couple crew members there, or at least one crew member. They do have a very little stove that they bring into Zealand Falls hut, and I believe they bring the stoves the other huts too, primarily to just take the chill out of the air, but mostly to just melt water, which tends to freeze up when it's as cold as it is in the mountains.
All right.
So they have water for you, so you can kind of use dehydrated meals, or if you want to boil stuff up. They do have like a propane stove that's on. That being said, it's still pretty darn cold in the huts. When we were there, it was like 20. My thermometer on my my backpack went down to 23 degrees overnight in the bunk room.
Wow.
So it's pretty nippy. I think when we were all of us being like, I think it was like we had 7 in our group and there was 1 additional hiker plus the crew members, so like 10 people in the main area of the hut. Like I think it got up to maybe in the 30s by the stove. So it wasn't awful in there if you're bundled up. Definitely manageable, but a winter experience fully.
So
and,
hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. Josh has questions.
We got to change the name of the podcast to Josh Has Questions. But so this is I've seen these huts. I think I've been in one of these huts before.
Yep. Yeah, Greenleaf hut.
But there's nothing to heat this cabin.
No,
like,
just the stove.
There's no like wood stove to like get some heat in there.
Yeah, it is a wood stove that they have in there, but it's a small one. Like it's not enough to like raise the temperature that much. Yeah,
and so why? I guess why is that? Why is that are they not expecting people to be there in the winter time?
Yeah, that is a valid question. You know, I don't really know where it's like if they like why wouldn't they just have a stove big enough to like heat the whole thing? Number one, with how cold it is, you'd probably have to burn a tremendous amount of wood. I would think, for real, to keep the thing like even like 50 degrees. It'd probably be a lot on a caretaker to do that. And you got to think too, like they'd have to have all that wood like stashed, dried somewhere. You can't just like, they're not just going to be going chopping down like frozen trees in the woods in the middle of the winter. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be, maybe we can have someone on from the AMC hut system and figure out the logic behind that.
Yeah, we gotta have somebody on from a hut, because what else if there's nobody staying in the hut and you're the caretaker for the hut?
Yep, you're just there.
What are you doing all day?
Like so even while we were there, like I'm sure they do things like this, but so we rolled in, and again I'll get back into sort of the hike, but while we're on the hut tangent, but like the caretaker that we were staying with, like she was dealing with stuff like carbon monoxide alarms needing to be changed. The well froze up on the morning that we left, so it was actually her, and it was actually the VP of the AMC hut system ended up staying over. I guess she was sort of just visiting and checking in on things, but the well pump actually froze up, so they actually had to go chop with a chisel and get, I think they did end up getting water out of the well, but at one point they were talking about like going to the river, because Zealand Falls, there's a river behind it, like literally going and chopping a hole into the river and like getting water out of that to bring in for people. They had a Boy Scout troop coming in that night. They had like 30-something people.
No way.
So yeah, stuff like the solar panels, like I know they do stuff where it's like it's funny with the crew member. I remember she was funny. She's like, I do love the Boy Scouts, but she's like, it's like full, like to be completely honest, like she said something to the effect of like she's probably going to end up having to scrape like frozen pee out of like the basically the head building where the bathrooms are, because she's like, I don't know if little boys can't aim or like what the deal is. I'm not looking forward to scraping like frozen pee off of like the planks and stuff.
Well, grown men can't aim either, so
yeah, I know. I was like, I really was conscious of trying to keep it in. The,
that was her way of telling you
supposed
guys
to be.
keep it
Yeah,
tight.
yeah. She's like, let's make sure we hit the target here. Hit the target tonight.
Oh man.
But yeah, doing stuff like that. And I mean, they do have like snacks, and they keep basically hot water boiling like all day, so you can kind of use for dehydrated meals or like warm drinks or things like that.
So is that how you guys got your primary food? Is just like dehydrated meals or whatever you brought that like you could warm up with hot water? Or did you bring,
for the most part, I mean, there was a mix. So Mike actually brought in a rotisserie chicken. He hiked in later that night, but that was the thing. Like a 3-pound rotisserie chicken. Most people brought in dehydrated meals, though. To your point, like I feel like that's probably the lightest, most popular option. I brought a couple of those for like dinner and breakfast. I would definitely bring more in the future because I was kind of hungry and didn't feel like eating cold like trail mix anymore. It's nice to eat like a hot meal.
But you didn't bring like your own little like personal camping stove type deal?
No, like because they basically had a giant like an 8-gallon pot like of like hot water, steaming hot, so you could actually use that to rehydrate stuff. Or if you want to like Nalgene bottles are generally good to put hot water in, which we had an interesting debate on. Apparently they haven't always been, and there's chemicals in some of the older ones they used to make that would break down if they went above certain temperatures, but that's a discussion for another day. The type of stuff you talk about when you're with a bunch of hikers.
Well, when it's 24 degrees and you got nothing else to do.
Yeah, you're like,
you can't feed the fire because the stove's too small.
Exactly. It had a little gauge on the stove too. And it was funny how it had like an optimal temp and like an overly warm, and we're like, come on, we need to get this back to optimal again. And it's amazing how good a little stove can feel. And it is enough just to they have things to like hang up and dry up your clothes.
Yeah.
And I was able to dry my boots off, so sort of put them by the fire. I was able to thaw my camera out because I took video of most of the trek, or a good portion of it.
Nice.
But yeah, I guess that's those people that are in the crew, man. Like hats off to them, because that's a job. Like to your point, if you're just up there for like, she walked in the night before, I'd imagine by herself, and like just kind of got into the hut, because I guess it's probably not popular to stay there on Tuesday, Wednesday nights that much.
Yeah.
Or certain days.
She's probably there for a few days, I would bet.
Yeah. Yeah, a week rotation they do. We're asking her like crazy. What they like bring for food, and she's like, I do try to cook like one like fresh sort of meal a day, but she's like, yeah, you kind of end up eating sort of easy processed like kind of garbage food. And really, she was saying like you just try to move around the whole time, because I feel like you must never really get warm. Like you're just kind of freezing unless there's an unusually warm day. Like she was saying, because we had that cold stretch that night where I think she said it got down to like something stupid like 20 degrees in the hut or in the main area or something like that, like in the middle of the day. Like that's all it hit. I'm like, that's freezing. That
wild.
Is freezing cold.
That's so cold.
Yeah, it's all relative. It's funny, we're like 35 degrees doesn't feel bad inside when it's like 12 outside, so kind of learned that over the weekend.
Yeah.
Oh
man, how'd you sleep? Did you sleep good?
Yeah, I slept pretty well.
That's good.
Slept pretty well. I guess we'll talk about sort of what I brought for gear in this again. Thanks, Peter and Jake, and
all right. Before you do gear, I just got one more hut question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before we get into the hike, we haven't even gotten into the hike yet. This is great.
Before we get into the hike and the gear.
Yeah.
One more hut question. I might have more questions later, but we'll circle back if we do.
Sure.
So now this did you have to like make a reservation, or you just kind of show up and pay your $30? Yes.
So in advance, we made a reservation online, and you can kind of put in your AMC. I think it's like an ID number if you get the discount or whatever. But it's my understanding that sort of Peter, I believe, was going through the site and to try to figure out, and we ended up doing it on Friday, January 10th, as opposed to Saturday the 11th, because they were looking at the 11th originally, and it was pretty much booked up from that Boy Scout troop. Like he kept trying to put the reservation up to like the 7 people, or like how many we had, just to make sure like we had enough room.
Yeah.
And basically it like will stop letting you book them once you hit a certain number. Like it wouldn't flat out say like how many people were available. It just says whether there's bunks available or not, but it actually stopped. So that's kind of why they opted to be like, hey, like let's go up on a Friday night. And a couple of us went up in the morning instead of doing the Saturday. So there's definitely people that go to them. It's not like it's an totally unpopular thing or anything.
So now, but what if you're hiking and you just stumble across it? Can you just like pay and stay?
I would imagine if they had room. Yeah, I mean we'd have to find out.
We gotta get a hut. We gotta get somebody from the hut on, dude. We gotta get a hut person.
Yeah, we'll have to find an AMC hut person and talk to them about because I feel like we just have
questions.
And no, these are all valid. It's not stuff that I've thought about necessarily either, because I just kind of had people telling me like, just do this, and you go here and do this thing, and like because they had done it before.
And because I'm super into it. I mean,
there's a ton of history with those huts too.
To
we
bring up,
gotten into.
You talked about Boy Scouts. This is very much. That was very. I saw the pictures and read about what you guys are doing, and we talked a little bit about it. But that just brought up Boy Scout vibes to me. Like, we're hiking and we're camping. Yep. We're gonna go stay in this hut. We're gonna fend for ourselves. We're gonna whatever. Chop down some trees. Chop up some firewood. Feed the fire. Keep ourselves warm, and learn all about nature while we're out here. So. I was super into it because that makes it like a whole full experience. Like, yeah,
and that's the other thing. The crew is getting wood and stuff, and she was feeding the fire the whole time too. It's not like they wouldn't allow us to do that, because we probably would have just kept putting a lot of wood on it because we were cold.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, so I thought that was cool, man. The little kid in me is like, oh yeah, what an adventure that is.
Well, maybe we'll have to do one sometime.
I'm down, man.
Yeah, just go to I mean, it's a beautiful place to stay, just in general, even if you're not hitting like anything crazy.
Oh yeah.
And they have a couple of those open. All right, so so I'll just touch on the gear really quick, because next we'll get into the hike. Like I was saying, Peter gave me the rundown. I talked to these guys, so I kind of was able to guess, and they were like, "Oh, it went down to this temperature in the hut last year. This is what I brought for like sleeping stuff." I haven't camped a ton. I'm really a day hiker. I'll fully admit to that. I only have a 40-degree bag and a tent that my newest tent only Josh has used. I have another tent that we've used a few times, or I've used.
It worked out good in early, mid-September, October, whenever it was. It worked out great then, but it was definitely not 10 degrees.
Yeah, it's definitely not built for warmth, But yeah, I had a 40-degree bag, and I actually ended up picking up a 20-degree bag from REI. I think it was like a Big Agnes one. Figuring that if it goes down to 20 degrees, I've got that bag, and then I more or less opened up my 40-degree sleeping bag as a quilt to use over. And I brought plenty of layers, and I also brought like basically more, not pajamas, but brought dry clothes, like just leggings and some like fleece pajama pants to change into. I brought some like sort of camp shoes, like cheap $20 like insulated sort of booty things from Amazon, just that I could take off my wet cold boots.
Were they the Rock Doves?
No, they weren't Rock Doves. They're some like random brand. They're like if you think of like just significantly cheaper like Rock Doves, like they were literally $20. I think they were $19.75 or something like that. They were like the cheapest ones I could find with the best reviews.
I'm a big fan of the Rock Doves, just so you know.
Yeah, I think next time these haven't been too bad. They're definitely going to be sort of beater slippers, like wear at trailheads and stuff like that. They're just like hard plastic on the bottom, but like kind of insulated with like fleece on the top. So
yeah,
they kind of fit the bill. And yeah, I pretty much had like a hoodie and just like some other layers. I ended up wearing a puffy, and like to bed, I was pretty much fine with like smart wool leggings, those fleece pajamas over. I had just wool socks on, and then on top I had like a smart wool 200-gram top, and I think I just had like a hoodie on. I didn't even wear my puffy, but I was pretty much fine with that. And I wore pretty much a hat to bed, which I kept evidently like knocking off in my sleep, but I pretty much had a hat on. And I also threw like this is apparently like a common trick, but threw like hot water in an Nalgene and threw that in my sleeping bag. Yeah. It kind of kept me warm. I threw some hand warmers in that I just happened to have from using that day. They worked pretty well, but then I woke up at one point in the middle of the night. It was like, why is my left ass cheek on fire? And like just tossed it out under the bug. So
my my taint is burning up.
Burning up. Feels like the surface of the sun right now.
Smells like nacho cheese.
Smells like chili.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I was pretty much fine in those things. Again, it went down to like low mid 20s. And yeah, it was comfortable enough for me to sleep. And so like you said, like I actually slept pretty well. The one thing though, apparently this is better than some of the other huts, and this will be kind of it. We keep talking about the hut, and I keep talking about it.
Can't ignore the hut.
Can't ignore the hut. But the way Zealand huts arranged, and it's nice from my understanding compared to some of the other huts, is that the bunk houses are actually attached to the main portion of the building with the stove, so you get some warmth from that, which is kind of nice, albeit it still went down to the 20s. and maybe teens 10 degrees outside. I think it went down overnight. But you still have to go outside to use the bathroom. So the head building where all the bathrooms are, you had to like walk across basically a snowy, icy deck. So you got to really want to go to the bathroom and really have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Want to get out of that sleeping bag. I think I made it to like maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm like, I feel like my bladder is going to explode. I need to go out.
Oh no.
But some of them, it's like more of a walk in, like you're walking just straight up in snow to get to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So that's definitely more of a thing. So I was trying to be conscious of like, I need to hydrate myself, but also don't want to be peeing like 4 or 5 times tonight because I don't want to have to walk out 4 or 5 times in the freezing cold to go to the bathroom and get out of the nice warm sleeping bag. But yeah, I slept pretty well, to be honest, despite some snoring and stuff going on. I passed out.
Good.
So yeah, back to the hike.
Now to the hike. So we planned this overnight. I was kind of mentioning the tentative plan we had was to try to go to Zeacliff after hitting the hut, and potentially Zealand. And the next day we were going to basically bushwhack or hit the Lendahan Trail, bushwhack a short bushwhack allegedly to South Hale, come back over Mount Hale, and sort of go back on the road. So that was sort of the tentative plan for the overnight. And we stayed Friday, January 10th through Saturday, January 11th. So the route to Zealand, and I covered a couple of different stats in here. I did not summarize exactly what we ended up doing. I can kind of give you a ballpark of certain sections of what we ended up doing as far as elevation gain and mileage. But if you're just looking to bag Zealand in the winter, the round trip, it's going to run you 18.8 miles and 2950 feet. Part of this, it's shorter, albeit still kind of a long hike in the summer, but most of this is because it actually is a 3.7 mile road walk each way just to get to the Zealand trailhead. They close Zealand Road usually the tail end of sort of, I'd say, the fall, early winter. Josh, it's the same one that we did Sugarloaf off of way back. So we basically walked all the way down that road to the end of it. And over the little bridge?
Yep, we walked all the way. Yeah, it keeps going. That whole road, like I think it's about a mile out to where the Sugarloafs, the 52 with a view ones, are off of Zealand Road, and then we walked about another 2.7 miles past to that. So the beginning of the hike, you're walking down that road more or less for a while, and the end.
Where's the parking? Where's the parking for that road? There's no lot, right?
So good question. So it's actually so the road, I should say, the road is 3.5 miles from the beginning off 302 to the end, where the Zealand trailhead is. But it's actually a 0.2 mile road walk from the parking area. So the parking area is like on the north side of 302, shortly after Zealand Road. So it's a little bit past that. You park. There's a cleared area over there, primarily for hikers, and also a lot of snowmobilers. There's a snowmobile trail that basically runs alongside of the road in winter over there. And there's a little tunnel that goes underneath the road too that we weren't aware existed, or not all of us anyways. But yeah, so if you're looking to do Zealand in the winter, it's a haul, to say the least, to do it out and back. We more or less would have done all the elevation gain. When I say we, I mean me and Jake, basically to Zealand, just with how the day shaked out. But yeah, we all met. We had kind of been in communication, and Mike did a great job organizing. But more or less, him and his buddy Tom were working. Didn't take the day off on the Friday and met up with us later. So they hiked in later at night by themselves. And then Peter, Jake, Steve, James, and I all went earlier in the morning and met up. And we actually, again, had goals to pretty much go out to the hut and then hit Zeacliff, and then head on to Zealand. So that was the plan. We started off, and it was kind of snowy and stuff. Not bad walking. I think we made it about 2.5 miles out, something like that, to where the trailhead actually is for Mount Hale, the Hale Brook trailhead. And at that point, I think we had spikes on, and then eventually we had to switch over to snowshoes right around there. There wasn't a ton of snow, but it was enough where we were definitely pushing through, and we're like, we probably should pack this out for Mike and Tom later, in the least, so they're not like complaining about us post-holing and kind of trying to mash it down a little bit for them. So we made it that far without snowshoes. The snowshoes would stay on for the rest of the trip from here on out. So there was definitely fresh snow getting in there. Eventually we got to the parking area for the summer parking area for the Zealand trailhead. Then from there, about 6.4 miles out, you're going to hit the Zeacliff Falls hut. And shortly before the Zeacliff Falls hut, there's this really nice bog area. I think a lot of people see pictures with like these bog bridges. We could actually see up to Zeacliff and Zealand at that point. It was kind of snowing on and off, but it was cleared enough that you could kind of see through. And again, we're just trudging in our snowshoes, and pretty moderate hike up to that point through some nice forest. The very end, like stretch of that stretch, like right before like the final 0.2 miles up to Zeacliff Falls hut is very steep. It probably goes up like, I would guess, a couple hundred feet in kind of short order, kind of the last climb till you get to Zealand hut. And like I said, Zealand hut basically is 6.4 miles out from the parking area on 302 in the winter. From there, we decided to have some lunch. And this is like another thing, is like I saw everybody was like had brought in sandwiches and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, I should have brought a sandwich with me. I just brought some like trail mix and stuff like that.
You didn't bring a hooks at breakfast sandwich?
Oh, I had two before I left, but I still was hungry again. And I'm like, I should have brought like a sub or something a little bit tastier. And it was nice. The caretaker actually had the stove on, which they normally don't do in the middle of the day. I think it had to be like around 10:30. I don't know if it was like 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that by that point. But she was actually trying to heat up the hut because, and I think she found out later that the sound she was hearing wasn't actually the solar panels, but apparently she thought it was so cold that the solar panels had an alarm or some sensor that was actually beeping. And she was actually basically indicating that they weren't working, and she was actually trying to heat the solar panels up so that they'd actually start working again. So again, like it was that cold that week that people were like, man, the solar panels aren't working because it's so damn cold, even up here in a place where we're used to the cold. So it was nice. She had the stove on. We all kind of dumped a bunch of our gear. I had brought, in addition to food, I brought 2 cans of beer in, which was heavy. And then had all my like sort of sleeping bags and all that stuff. So it felt great to dump like, I don't know, probably like 7 or 8 pounds of crap just at the hut. So after we ate some lunch, we all continued on to Zeacliff, and this is sort of where the fun began. So there was kind of maybe a sort of trough from people snowshoeing and from the caretaker coming in the night before of just on the trail. So it was kind of like we were breaking trail a little bit, but it wasn't bad. And we did notice that before we even got in the hut, that the trail out to Zeacliff was completely unbroken. And even though there wasn't a ton of snow down low, I can guarantee you that there is a veritable crap ton of snow in areas of the Whites, especially this area heading up to Zeacliff. So we started breaking trail. We kind of all started rotating through. I actually at this point still had my camera out, like fully filming like everything, and I just had my tripod, which my tripod's a carbon fiber one. I can kind of use it to like poke in the snow and sort of prime myself. But I hit a point, I believe Jake and Peter were behind me, where like I just kept trying to kick in, and there was a snow mound that had to be up to my waist, and I just couldn't get a grip. And I'm like, I need to stop and put this camera away and get out one of my I don't hike with a trekking pole that much, but in the winter when you have deep snow like that, you definitely kind of need it to just punch into the snow and sort of pry yourself up. So yeah, we were all taking turns breaking trail. I know James was out in front for a while. I think everybody was pretty much just punching through. And finally 7.7 miles in, we got up to Zeacliff. And Zeacliff, I think, is probably even better known to a degree than Zealand is itself. Obviously, Zealand's sort of the peak and the destination that a lot of people are going for, either on a Z-Bonds traverse or just getting Zealand out and back by itself. But Zeacliff has probably one of the most amazing views in the Whites. It's, as it sounds like, it's a cliff. And it overlooks sort of the entire area encompassing from like the sort of the Willie Range with the presidentials behind it and Mount Washington, all the way across an area of sort of the Pemi Wilderness and White Wall Mountain and Mount Carrigan, and you can see Chikura and Carrigan Notch, the Hancocks, and you see this really fantastic sort of, I guess, east-southeast view, maybe even northeast to southeast. It's really this great sprawl, and when we got up there, we were fortunate that it was pretty much clear, and we could mostly see, like, I think the presidentials were a little bit clouded, at least when we were going up there, but just a great view and well worth sort of that effort of going up. So it was at this point that James and Steve sort of decided that they were going to head back to the hut, and they weren't going to continue on to Zealand. And then Jake and Peter were kind of looking at me being like, and they know that I needed Zealand for my winter peaks, so they were kind of like, you probably want to go for this if we have time and stuff. So we knew the ridge was unbroken out there, but we still had enough daylight where we're like, we probably are going to need headlamps on the way back, depending on how fast this goes. But we'll sort of see what happens. And And I know Peter was kind of mentioning, he's like, I just need like a break from breaking trail, frankly. And I'll blame anybody because it was just powder deep snow. And Jake still was looking, I guess, fairly spry as anyone can look after we're kind of punching through snow. But I was like, all right, like we'll go for it. So I sort of started out and was breaking trail for a bit, and it was kind of interesting. At first, we're going across some Zeacliff, across and at this point, you're actually on Twin Way. So Twin Way more or less starts from Zealand Hut and continues all the way, I think, to like around where you hit probably like the area past Guy and where it becomes the Bond Trail. I'm not exactly sure, and I didn't write it down here, so you'll have to look on the map and forgive me for that. But on Twin Way, we started seeing these drifts that were like waist high, but it was like kind of like a guessing game. Like some of them were actually frozen solid, and you could kind of sort of walk over them with sort of powder on top. And actually over here we saw some moose tracks, which was kind of cool. You could tell, like, I'm like, we're all joking, like this Dick's just like post holing through the snow. He doesn't have his snowshoes on. But yeah, we had that guessing game, and like eventually we kept going through, and like it started to get pretty powdery, but it wasn't awful. And I think it was probably around the halfway point, and it's maybe like a mile and a half out to basically to Zealand from where Zeacliff is. And Peter was kind of pulling the plug. He was like, kind of, I've had enough, and he was getting tired, so he made his way back, and he was comfortable going back on his own. And at least at this point too, like you're going back down a broken trail, so it's definitely not as bad as breaking it out fresh. And Jake and I kind of looked at Jake. I'm like, you still comfortable going on? And he was like, yeah. So we pretty much ended up plugging all the way to Zealand. From there, it's a short spur trail off of Twin Way. It's like 0.2 miles, I believe, to the summit of Zealand. And what was really nice is with the snowpack and kind of the fact that it's winter and leaves are off the trees. And what I did not remember from this trail is that there's actually some really nice pokes of views. So it was kind of cool on the way out. Like we're seeing these views in between. The last, I don't know, 0.3 or 0.4 miles was a slog. There was some legitimate waist high drifts of snow that we were pushing through, and we were kind of trading off breaking trail a little bit. And yeah, it was, I think at one point I was kind of looking at my all trails and in GPS and seeing how far we were. And at one point I'm just like, I just don't want to look anymore, because it kept feeling like we were just further and further away every time. So, that last bit, we just chatted it up, and it seemed to go by fast for how difficult going it was. And we made it to Zealand, and at that point, I think I wasn't even super excited to get there. We just kind of got to the spur. It's a totally viewless summit. There is a really nice sign that says Zealand on it, which I guess a lot of people enjoy. You could barely see the Zealand thing because it was so frosted. And at that point, we took some pictures. We took like a selfie. I did a little blip on my camera being like, I'm not filming anymore, because this is just too much. I didn't film much going across Twin Way anyways, because we were breaking trail. Probably be some interesting video I'll have to share out of just what it looks like pushing through like drifts and everything like that, and going through a windblown area of the Whites around sunset. And speaking of sunset, on the way back, I got some ridiculous shots of basically twilight and alpenglow to the east as we were coming down. That was kind of one bonus of us doing it at that time of night. I think it was we must have got to Zealand around like 4 o'clock or something like that. Wasn't really paying attention to the exact time. But yeah, we were both kind of like, holy crap, this is amazing. Like we're like, this is really beautiful. The wind finally started dying down a little bit, albeit it was still quite chilly. We were wearing some nice Bergen Highlander hoodies over like as sort of our outer layer, just because we were moving. And I believe they were pretty much frozen solid. Like we were just coated in ice and snow. So yeah, it was fun coming back over. We had some awesome views. And I really was like, we need to hit Zeacliff. Like we're up here, it's like golden hour right now. And Zeacliff was absolutely beautiful when we hit it again. And it had cleared up enough where you could see Mount Washington and everything. Like it was super clear, really nice pink, like golden glow on Whitewall Mountain and some of the surrounding peaks. That was just like unreal. Definitely one of the best views I've seen in recent memory. And it was just beautiful. It was funny too, we were taking off our packs, and it actually looked like we basically, because of the frost and the snow, it looked like we had basically like black sort of like tank tops on, because it was just like completely frosted everywhere. And on the way down, we were getting our headlamps ready, and it's funny, we hadn't put them on yet, and we're just chatting back and forth. And at one point I sort of see a shadow, like a silhouette of like me, like coming down the trail, and I'm like, oh, did Jake put his headlamp on? But it was actually that the moon, being close to a full moon, was so bright that it actually was bright enough that we didn't have to put our headlamps on, like at all, coming back to the hut, which is really cool. Yeah, so we're coming down like 5 o'clock. I think we got back to the hut probably around 5 o'clock. And it's worth mentioning that I think we figured out it took us like a third of the time to get back from Zealand as it took us to get out to Zealand.
Wow.
Like, yeah,
Wow.
to give you an idea of how much breaking trail slows you down. I mean, and I was telling Jake on the way down, like I've been kind of fortunate in just with how I've ended up hiking. A lot of times locals break out those trails, and I haven't really broken trail like that for that extensively. And it was a lot of work, and it made me really realize that if you're doing like a Z-Bonds in the winter, you really need like a crew of people to be able to swap out breaking trail. Like there's no way you could do that by yourself. Like I don't care if you were like the fittest person ever. If you start going through waist high snow drifts, like just logistically, it's very, very difficult. It's very tough work. It kicks your ass. Like that's all I can say. I definitely got to learn a little bit of that. Any questions on that stretch, Josh, or just keep rolling?
Nope, I'm with you.
Enjoying. Thanks for that. And apologize everybody who likes hearing Josh more than me, but just recap, because we've had those messages apparently before. But I'm just recapping through.
Tonight's a Nick night. I need to hear more about what happens next.
So just a little recap. We basically did 9.4 miles in total out to Zealand, and then headed back to the hut. So that's kind of how much we're in, and we had done around 3,000 feet of gain basically to knock that out. I was totally stoked, and thanks again, Jake, for kind of coming out and doing that.
That's Jake from the Jake episode.
Yeah, Jake from Jakester D2 from the Jake episode. He was a climber as well as a hiker. It was fun coming across that ridgeline at sunset. It was definitely something I won't soon forget. So we got back to the cut, got nice and cozy. I kind of talked about, we made some meals, we hung out. Eventually Tom and Mike showed up. Mike ate a good chunk of his rotisserie chicken, but I believe he didn't finish quite all of it. I think it was like 3 or 4 pounds. We were joking with that, and before we knew it, it kind of was time. The crew will put the lights out and sort of let the stove start to go out. I think it was around like 9 o'clock, so we just threw on some like headlamps and we were chatting a little bit, but I would guess we went to bed maybe around like 9:30 or so, and conked out pretty quick. So the next day we woke up. I think I maybe woke up to go to the bathroom around 6:30. I could sort of hear people rustling around, and it was funny too that I believe, I don't know if it was on the radio or if this was actually the crew members mentioning it, but you could hear them sort of on the radio or whatever going across sort of different stats from the huts and like the weather and how much snowfall and like all these things. I imagine that they must just do that every morning to sort of report to each other on kind of what's going on with the AMC and sort of the weather. So that was kind of neat to like wake up to like hearing like winds northwest, gusts up to 25 miles per hour, 2 inches of snowfall. Like just kind of hear that. And I think it was about 7 o'clock. We finally were all like sort of shaking out of bed and having some breakfast. I had like a dehydrated breakfast bowl, which actually was pretty decent. It wasn't too bad. And we saw this crew going around sort of figuring out their well issue where the well wasn't working. And then they were going back to the well to take a chisel and punch out water. And that was the thing. But we all filled up and got ready. And I took a nice little group shot that I shared out, but I'll share again with this post of sort of all of us at the hut getting ready to leave. And we made our way up to Lendahan. So Lendahan splits off from the junction of sort of the Zealand Trail and Twinway. And this more or less heads, if you just take it straight north, it'll actually take you basically over Hale. And from Hale, you can go down the Hale Brook Trail back to the Zealand Road, which is what we intended on doing. Or you could actually take the Fire Wardens Trail, which is not an official trail or officially maintained, but it's well traveled in winter, and that kind of breaks off of like North Twin Trail. So you could exit that way if you did want to. And then the plan to get to South Hale was basically to more or less hike to a col between the sort of plateau, I guess, that the summit cone of Hale's on to the north. And then again, South Hale, like it is in the name, there's a bump to the south of that, where it probably ascends like, I think it was like 300 or 400 feet of gain to the peak of South Hale. So we're going to basically hike to that col and head up a northeast ridge and make our way sort of southwest up to the bump. So we had to break trail all through here again, which was kind of exhausting. I think Jake took most of the roll through this, until we met a nice guy whose Instagram handle I'm forgetting. I think it's A-Bombgram was his handle. Jake had seen him before and kind of recognized his face, and it looked like he kind of recognized a few people from our crew. And we were super happy and super surprised to see that he was coming over Hale down back at Lendahan. which we didn't think we'd see anybody all day. So he actually at least broke out with one pair of snowshoes, broke out the trail up to Hale for us. So we were pretty stoked to see that. So once we reached the col, we had been told to look for sort of this boulder. And from here, we more or less made our ascent. And I think mostly, like, we all kind of had a little bit of a hand navigating, but James, who Mike and Jake had met doing the Adams slide, I believe, over the summer, was a very experienced bushwhacker compared to the rest of us. And he sort of took the lead and started going up the ridge line. I was sort of following behind him. And eventually we sort of got up the really steep portion, I'd say, and we could tell that we were more or less on the sort of summit ridge, I guess, of South Hale. And with a lot of these New Hampshire 100 highest, I don't know if it's all of them, but they actually have plastic like PVC canisters or jars or things like that. And within them, they typically have a little notepad where you can sign in stuff, but they'll also be marked with like the elevation. Like that's kind of how you know like you're at the summit. There's not like as much of a commercialized like summit sign. Not that all the 48 have that, but it's a little bit different vibe. And you really got to like, again, you're bushwhacking. So we got through the woods and you're kind of just up there and we're sort of all looking at, like I had my Garmin InReach Mini on, along with sort of the Garmin app. And we're all kind of comparing like GPS of like our location. And then like James is sort of reading the woods and the ridge line and being like, oh, we should go this way. And like, we're kind of trying to figure out the approach. There's kind of some cliffs on South Hale that do have views, but we did not go over there. It was also cloudy and snowy that day, so we weren't kind of doing it. The clear skies, worth mentioning from the night before, were completely gone. That Jake and I had. It was pretty much snowing on and off all day on Saturday. So quite cold. And once we started getting close to the summit, this is where the real fun part of bushwhacking sort of began. So I think Jake and Peter were in front and we're like, we finally found this spot where like we can tell we're not on the summit, like there's no canister. It looks like there's an area through the woods that gets a little bit higher than this. So we're like, we're gonna push through this. And eventually we got through these spruce trees that were like just super thick, dude. Like I think like spruce trees like a foot or two apart, like very thick, like very like you're pushing through them. And the fun part too is that they're all covered in snow. So like we're put our shells on, but you're just getting, like they call it the car wash, like you're just getting dumped with cold snow the entire time. Like it's going down, try not to let it go down the back of your hood or whatever. And we're pushing through all this with like, again, all like I had my all of your gear, all of the gear, like I had my sleeping bag on it and like all this stuff. And we're just like pushing through it. And finally, I think where I was just like, is this really like what we're supposed to be doing? We punch through and Jake sees the summit canister in this clearing area. And after talking, like we talked to Steve, wow. When we talked to Dave, I was thinking Steve eats shit, not Dave shits in the woods. But when we talked to Dave about this, that's kind of just the price you pay for South Hale. Like some of the summits are like that in the New Hampshire 100 highest, or just when you bushwhack, but you just have to push through this crazy spruce to basically get in there. And it's weird because like we've talked about spruce traps on the podcast and stuff before, but I'm like, this is like literally, we're walking on all spruce boughs, and like this is like not the greatest terrain to walk on in snowshoes right now. But we're just pushing through it. We found it. Maybe I'll become a canister whore like Dave says he is one day, but it was damn satisfying to see that canister in the woods and be like, we made it to the summit. And yeah, fun fact, so I think it was about 0.6 miles we measured on Garmin and Gaia and whatnot to try to get to the summit of South Hale. But it took us 2.5 hours and maybe a couple hundred feet of ascent. So it took us a long time to get out and back to South Hale. And yeah, we got back finally to the Lend-A-Hand Trail. And at this point, I was like, I should have layered up a little bit sooner. Especially, I was moving a little bit slower at one point and kind of just should have layered up a bit more. But did throw on mittens and stuff. And luckily, we had a pretty significant climb up to the summit of Hale. So we pretty much went up the backside of Hale, went up and over. And at this point, we actually split off into two groups. Tom was having some issues, I guess, with his foot and one of his snowshoes, kind of bothering him. So Mike, James, and Tom kind of ended up hanging out and took a little bit longer to get out. I believe Tom ended up switching to spikes to help sort of him just move a little bit more quickly. But Steve, Jake, and I and Peter were all like pretty cold by this point. Again, it's not like it was actually warmer than the day before, but you've just been in the snow all day. Like I feel like too, you
haven't been above 30 degrees in about two and a half days.
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. Like the realization that you kind of really haven't warmed up entirely for like 24 hours, over 24 hours at that point. So your body's just cold. I think I'd prepare next time and probably take a couple more dry layers. I'd also probably would have dumped like the 40-degree quilt and just been like, I'll just go without this instead. But yeah, I understand sort of it was a learning experience for me. So I'll definitely, there's a couple different things I'd do next time. But yeah, we were all cold. So like we kind of were going down Hale Brook, and eventually we got to the road and walked out. And then we just sort of warmed up in our cars. I changed into some dry clothes and basically just waited for Mike, James, and Tom. We wanted to make sure that they got out safe. We weren't just gonna like bail on and be like, "Good luck, guys."
Good luck. I gotta go home.
Yeah,
I'm cold.
yeah. So we were kind of hanging out, and from there made my way home. So that was the Zeacliff Falls hut overnight. Zealand was winter peak number 40 for me, and if I do start keeping track of the New Hampshire 100 highest, I have South Hale. So it was a fun experience. Thanks again, guys. Everybody, like, thanks again. It was a fun, very memorable experience, and I think it opened my eyes a little bit to sort of winter hut camping and just doing that. It's not something that I would have seen myself doing like 3 or 4 years ago, but to be completely honest, it's just not something I would have been like, I'm a day hiker, I don't know if I want to do this, but it was
awesome.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like you said, maybe it was just the Boy Scout vibe of the whole thing and going out with some like dudes and just like hanging out. And again, it's
an adventure.
I mean, I've done my share of hiking too, but it's nice to talk to guys that, again, like Peter, that's like almost all the way through like the White Mountain Guide, or like Jake, who kind of brings this different perspective as a climber and also hiking with Peter a lot, and then Mike, who's experienced winter hiker, and then James was just talking to him. He was a very interesting individual. James, if you're listening to this, thanks for chatting. And he actually had heard of our podcast and was going to start listening to it. So,
well, welcome to the pod.
Yeah. Welcome to the pod, James. But really enjoyed chatting with everybody. And Tom, it was a great time. I really had a good time.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah. So that was the overnight. Next, is anybody need a drink of water or anything? I'll take a drink of myself.
Grab your snacks. We got at least another hour and a half left.
Yeah, hopefully not that long. That was a long one, but it's tough. It's just a lot of information. So in that last day out from the Zealand hut, we did, and this was like thanks Peter, Jake, Steve for kind of tracking that, but we did about 9.5 miles and 1,850 feet of gain. But again, like 0.6 and probably about 400 feet of that was literally 2.5 hours just going to South Hale and back. Yeah, it was slow going, but that's schwacking, I guess, as they say. So on to January 13th. I had the day off for some bereavement, and I guess I was ready for just to get cold again because it had only been like a day or two, and I'm like, I'm gonna drive up. Head up north again. It was a Monday, and headed back to the Carter range because I still needed South and Middle Carter. So once again at the 19-mile Brook trailhead, I did leave a little bit later this day. I think I didn't get to the trailhead till like 9:40ish. I actually kind of just was like, I'm just gonna see when I wake up, but I'll set an alarm for like 6:30 or something in case I happen to sleep that late. As Josh said, like the period in our lives that we're at, like neither of us really. You don't just sleep that late anymore.
No.
It seems like that. Though I think I get to sleep a little bit later than you most times.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I've been on a 5:30 kick lately. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah. It happens. But back in the 19-mile Brook trailhead on 16 again. And to do South and Middle Carter, I was going to, again, go up 19-mile Brook trail to the Carter Dome trailhead, or to the Carter Dome trail. And then get to Zeta Pass. But instead of heading south to Carter Dome, I was going to head up north, up the Carter Mariah Trail, and then continue on over South and Middle Carter. And then I was actually, instead of going out and back, was going to go down to North Carter Trail, which meets the south branch of the Imp Trail, and take the Camp Dodge cutoff, which is sort of a forest road. Apparently it's commonly used. And then from Camp Dodge, was just going to have like maybe like a half-mile road walk back up 16, I guess south on Route 16 to go back to the trailhead. I guesstimated this loop to be around 11 miles and about 3,500 feet of elevation gain, according to the guide and stuff. So another pretty solid day, but was pretty stoked. I'm like, I don't feel like going back down. And I'm like, I know I'm probably going to come back down 19-mile Brook again for the Wildcats, which I did. So I'm like, I just want to loop it over and do something slightly different this time, just slightly different. So started in micro spikes, I made it to a little past South Carter without needing snowshoes, and eventually I started post-holing through. And I'm not gonna lie, it ran through my head that I'm like, if I see people out here and they realize that it's me from PUDs Podcast, because it has happened several times, not frequently. I don't have that much of an ego about it, but I'm like, if they see me post-holing through the trail and Josh hears about it, he is never gonna let me live that crap down.
What a schmuck.
Never gonna let me
especially because I always tell you to get them snowshoes on.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I post-holed 2 or 3 times. I'm like, I need to put snowshoes on. I'm like, I know I just wore them for like 20 miles through that Zealand hike. I'm like, I'll just throw them on again.
That means they're just well broken in, that's all.
Yeah, and anybody that's worn snowshoes too, I think I'm getting better at like not putting them super tight, but like going downhill especially, like they can chew up your toes pretty good. Like they're not, I think you probably get used to them or callous the more you wear them, especially over the winter. But they do eat up your feet a little bit. Like I think that's probably something worth mentioning. Like don't just wear snowshoes for your first time and go try to hike 20 miles. It's a really bad idea. But yeah, made it basically a little past South Carter without snowshoes. Strapped those on pretty much for a good next portion of the hike. I think I took them off like right around the Camp Dodge cutoff, or maybe like kind of coming down the Imp Trail where it was getting icy and bony again. But across this ridgeline, it's kind of cool going back to some of these peaks. We did it back in 2019 when me and Ash did the Carters, or Middle and South Carter. And I didn't really remember much of it at all, what to expect. All the summits are wooded, but with the snowpack, I did have some interesting views. Granted, there was some snow blowing it out, but I think the most spectacular viewpoint that stuck in my mind is right before you hit Middle Carter. There's a view that if it was totally clear, I'm sure you'd see Washington and across and some of its ravines. But I could see like Jefferson and like Adams and Madison and that whole sort of Washington Great Gulf area to like sort of the west, northwest, and then down to Gorham. So that was pretty sick. So it's not like, even though the summits are viewless, you do have some views that to be had out there if it's a nice day. Made my way over Middle Carter, crossed the only hiker I crossed all day. She was actually working on her trail rights list. I guess there's like a Mount Lethe, it's Lethe, that's on the trail right 72, that she was looking to bag, and also a gridding basically Middle and South Carter. So I crossed her and we chatted for maybe like 5 or 10 minutes. And it was nice this day too, compared to how cold it was, like say like when we did Zealand, or even sort of the overnight trip where it was snowing wet. Like this day it was snowing on and off, but it was like in the 20s on the ridgeline, which is like, it's all relative. I felt like, I'm like, this is beautiful. I'm like, I'll take this all day. It was like 20 degrees or something like that. Like, this is gorgeous. And not much really else. Fortunately, it was uneventful in a good way, but I just had some sort of peaceful time to myself, and I was just thinking over some recent stuff that's happened, and kind of coming down the trail. And there's some really beautiful birch glades on the way down the Imp Trail, and eventually put my spikes back on and made my way out. I think around 5 hours or something it took me. So again, got home, made bedtime, so that was good. Made dinner time. Didn't hit any traffic or anything. So Middle and South Carter banged out for winter peaks number 41 and 42. Bang, bang. Down the whole Carter's finally done, but I still had to get back to the Wildcats. All right, that was kind of my next target anyways, or isolation depending on conditions. But the way it worked out, we were like midweek. I think Mike sent out in the group text being like, hey, anybody doing anything this weekend? And we had our long weekend planned out that we already talked about. And I figured on Saturday I'd try to get out based on how the weather looked. So we got to chatting back and forth. I was really glad that I pitched the Wildcats and everybody seemed fairly receptive to it, though I think Peter did joke that he was like, I kind of was thinking of doing something not so strenuous this weekend. And I was like, well, it's not going to be as strenuous as bushwhacking something in waist deep snow. And he's like, oh, okay, that's true. So it was cool. But needless to say, Jake, Peter, and Mike all joined me. And logistically, you have a couple different options for doing the Wildcats in the winter. Most people do not take the summer route, which involves going up the steepest portion of the Appalachian Trail. And I literally mean the steepest portion of the Appalachian Trail that exists in its entirety. The climb up from Route 16, where Glen Ellis Falls is, up the Wildcat Ridge Trail to Wildcat D, is the single steepest portion of the Appalachian Trail for the mileage. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's a hell of a climb. It's exposed and ledgy in some spots. I've heard it's not as bad as some people make it out to be, probably condition dependent. I believe Mike was saying he did it that way when he did it for his winter. But not as common. The most common way is kind of what we did, which is you actually go up from the Wildcat ski area. and you ascend more or less some ski trails to the summit of Wildcat D. So a little blip on the Wildcats, if you're not familiar with them, there's actually 5 different, I guess, I don't know if you call them sub-peaks, but little peaklets. I don't even know if that's a word, peaklets.
Picklets.
And we were joking about this while we were hiking, but they didn't get really creative. So you think with like Wildcat, like maybe you do like Tomcat, Tabby Cat. Like there's other things you could like make the peaks different little names, right?
Top Cat.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but no, they just decided to make the peaks Wildcat A through E. So there's Wildcat A, B, C, D, E. And then Wildcat D, which is more or less the summit that's closest to the top of the ski area, if you're familiar with the Wildcat ski area. And then Wildcat A, which hangs above Carter Notch, are the 2 ones that count for the 4,000 footer list. E lies basically between Route 16 and D, and then from D on you got B and C, which B we didn't even notice. C was definitely a climb, like you could tell it was there. I think there maybe are little cairns that mark them in the summer. I don't know if they count for any other lists, but D and A are the ones you want. So one caveat that's fairly recently with the Wildcat ski area is that Vail Resorts bought them out, and it's my understanding that before Vail Resorts bought Wildcat ski area out, you could buy an uphill snowshoeing pass, which isn't uncommon at a lot of resorts. You can buy an uphill pass, but they just didn't want to deal with that anymore. So for all his winter hikers, that means that if you want to ascend Wildcat, you have to do it before the ski resort opens, which means getting up to the top before 8:30 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, damn.
Which isn't awful. Like once we did it, like I think the climb wasn't really that bad. I think we all thought it was going to be steeper. I had Sugarloaf back in Maine in my head, which was like, I'm like, this really might be an ass kicker of a thing. But going up the way we did, it really, I don't think it was that bad. The only sketchy thing was watching out for groomers, basically going by in the dark we got our headlamps on and stuff. But the route that we were able to do with a car spot, we met up early in the morning, dropped some cars at 19 Mile Brook Trailhead, and then we drove to the ski area in one car. Went up the ski area, more or less up the Polecat Trail, which is the ski trail, over the Wildcat Ridge Trail, down to Carter Notch, and from there we'd go down 19 Mile Brook, again for me, and back to Route 16. So that was the planned route. It's about 8.8 miles and 2,950 feet. And yeah, we pretty much did just that. Again, uneventful hike in a good way. We just had sort of fun chatting up. At one point, I stopped to pee and turned around and realized that, oh man, there's like this pink glow on Mount Washington behind us, and it's totally in the clear. That did not last very long as we got to the summit of Wildcat in the top of the ski area. It pretty much clouded up. We couldn't really see much for the rest of the hike, I would say. But it was cool to get sort of that brief alpine glow in the morning and kind of get some views out to the Prezzies. So got up to Wildcat, the top of the ski area, and made our way over to D. There's a pretty good climb up initially that I did not remember from, again, 2019, back from the ski area up to the formal summit of D. There is an actual observation platform there too, which I also sort of forgot about. You just forget things, I guess, over 6 years. But couldn't see anything, all clouded. Continued across the ridge line, eventually got to Wildcat A with a couple good climbs in between. And we had snowshoes on the entire time. Needed them on the ski trail, or I should say the entire time, at least till we got to Wildcat A. We got over to A, and there's actually a lookout over there right near the summit that looks down to Carter Notch. But again, you couldn't see anything. It was just snowy, so it was kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. Like the temperatures again weren't too bad, so we were thankful for that. And then from here on out, it was actually kind of cool. This was completely untrodden territory. I've never been to Carter Notch. I've never been to Carter Notch Hut yet, so I was kind of pumped to be like, this is a new trail, we can go on here, even though I have to go on 19 Mile Brook again. So we're making good time. So we actually decided once we got down to Carter Notch, and I should mention right before here, they were all mentioning to me it's steep as hell going down to Carter Notch from the top of Wildcat A. So we swapped to spikes. Could have still used snowshoes. I think it would have been sketchier because we ended up butt sliding a good portion of it. There was also a portion of really bad blowdowns about halfway down, and then a couple areas that had really bad side hilling, which could be a little sketchy and I think worse with snowshoes. So we ended up going down to Carter Notch, and again making a good time. Decided to stop for some lunch, and I was stoked. I'm like, I kind of want to see Carter Notch Hut, and we all went over there and had sort of a brief lunch, talked to the caretaker in there a little bit. It was cool to see another AMC hut. Peter was mentioning that this is actually the oldest standing structure of the existing AMC huts. A lot of them commonly have burned down over the years from propane and things like that, or I guess just like, I don't know if they'd used fuel oil or gas or whatever. A lot of them end up burning it down or whatever.
Wow.
So it was really neat to see that. And we had some food and then made our way back out on 19 Mile Brook. It did add a little, maybe like 100 feet of elevation gain or something. It's negligible, I think, if you're going to go take a journey to Carter Notch. Carter Notch was beautiful. There was some really crazy boulders like hanging up above the Talus field. And apparently Carter Dome from that direction is a beast. Like, it really is very, very steep trail. And they were all kind of talking about, like, if we were headed up there, we'd probably need like an ice axe and crampons. So it's like, I'm glad I didn't do Carter Dome that way when I did it. Eventually we got back to the friendly junction of the Carter Dome trail in 19 Mile Brook that I'd passed, I don't know how many, like at this point, like 4 times or whatever over the past like 2 weeks. And yeah, we made our way out down 19 Mile Brook and grabbed some lunch and a couple beers at Big Day Brewing, since it was like noontime or something. We're like, we still got time to kill. And
nice.
And then made my way back and met my girls. But yeah, that was my recent hiking events, everybody.
Man.
Hopefully,
in a nutshell, nice and tidy.
Hopefully everybody is still awake after this one.
Yeah, man. No, that's good. That's a lot. And so now you have how many more to go?
So I've got 4 peaks left. The Wildcats made for winter peaks number 43 and 44.
Nice.
And at this point, I've got Isolation left, and then I've got Bond Cliff, and West Bond. So likely going to leave me with. Isolation's a pretty, like, you can do it a couple, like 2 different ways. Can go up and kind of make a loop with Glen Boulder, Rocky Branch, or can kind of use some of the bushwhacks, which it's my understanding if they're broken out are not too bad to do. And then the bonds, I can either do sort of a Zealand hut overnight and hit it again that way, or do an out and back of like 22 miles of all 3 bonds in a day from Lincoln Woods. So that's going to be a doozy. I think I'm going to try to go for the bonds last. I've got people asking me what I want to plan for the final hike, but I think I'm going to try to do that. And I'm kind of stoked that having banged out some of those peaks and been able to, like, I kind of can bide my, like, wait for a good weather day and try to make sure I pick like a good weather window for winter. So I'm hoping I won't be like completely lost if I'm not able to finish my winter this year, depending how just life goes. You never know. Like, I try not to be like, hey, it's going to happen, but I've got like 2 months, got 4 peaks left. Granted, 3 of them is one hell of a hike and probably one of the hardest hikes I probably have done or ever will do in recent memory, at least mileage wise. That's a long ways to do in the winter. So we'll figure out what we're going to do with that one, but I'm hoping to finish this winter, man. So we'll see what happens.
4 peaks, 2 months, 2 peaks a month. You'll be fine.
Yeah. 2 hikes really. So.
Yeah, 2 hikes a month.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh no, 1 hike a month.
Well,
so you'll be all right.
Yeah, but yeah, in a nutshell, as you said.
Buttoned up. That's Nick's winter hikes so far.
Yeah, and shout out again to Jake, Peter, Mike, and everybody else who's kind of been joining in. Steve, James, and Tom. Like you said, it's been cool to again meet some other people. Trokey, I know Trokey's been out there crushing it too. We're down to almost the same amount of winter peaks left, so hopefully I'm hoping to get out to Isolation with him. But yeah, man, it's been great meeting some other people and bagging these peaks with some other people in the winter, because I did a lot of these solo in the beginning, and I'm thankful to have met some folks to tackle them with.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
All right. Are we ready to descend finally?
Let's do it.
Okay, so for tonight, to start off tonight's descent, I'm gonna bring up 2 things that I totally forgot to get out in the intro.
There you go.
Upcoming events for you people out there.
New business.
New business. So 48 Peaks is hosting a winter hiking safety event in collaboration with the Public Lands in Framingham, Mass. on Saturday, February 8th. This is a perfect opportunity for people who are looking to learn more about winter hiking, what to pack in their pack, and other tips, as well as how to learn how you can get involved in the fight to end Alzheimer's through 48 Peaks. So make sure to follow 48 Peaks Alls on Instagram for updates and details on the event. So a nice little event that they're putting on over our friends at the Alzheimer's Association, 48 Peaks. And then I wanted to kick it back again to what Nick Higgins was mentioning. I know Lynn's involved with this and setting this thing up as well, but we wanted to remind everybody that on February 15th and 16th, we have the Snow Safe Summit over at the Barndar Hostel in Rumney. So this 2-day event, the Snow Safe Summit, will focus on winter hiking safety, outdoor adventures, and community engagement with opportunities to learn new skills, try winter camping safely, and engage with local vendors and leaders. MWOBS, or I always call it MWOBS, but it's the Mount Washington Observatory acronym, MWOBS. Summit Operations Manager Mike Carmen will be a presenting speaker on Saturday, February 15th at 7 p.m., highlighting weather and forecasting on Mount Washington. And then we've got the Lions of Winter author Ty Gagney, who will also be discussing his new book during a fireside chat later in the evening.
Nice.
The team will also be tabling during the day on Saturday. It sounds like they've got other vendors and just informational people. I think Mike from SLASR is going to be there. I think Stomp might be there if he has time.
Who knows? We might be there.
Who knows? Yeah, I don't know if maybe we'll end up crashing that one.
We got the invite, but who knows?
We did. We'll see what happens, people. No promises.
We'll effort. We'll effort.
we hope to see you there. But yeah, that's the Snow Safe Summit. If you want to check it out, I would just look up. This is actually a page on Mount Washington Observatory's website. But I think if you search Snow Safe Summit, or I think it's Snow Safe Summit New England on Instagram, I can link it in the notes. I think I did probably in our previous episode, but sounds like a great event, and it sounds like a good sort of, if you've never done any winter hiking, good thing to check out. And our friend Lynn, and I know Nick will be there, and yeah, should be a good time.
It'd be good just to catch up with them.
Indeed, it would.
All right. What are you descending? What have you been watching?
So I did some homework for you this week, Josh. I did some homework. So
this doesn't sound like it, dude. It sounds like you've been real busy, but
yeah. This is just over the past few nights, so it's easy. And this is like kind of a short one, but I was poking through Netflix in some of the documentary sections, as you know that I do from time to time.
Oh, I hope that you say the same documentary that I was gonna say, but let's hear it.
The one, I think it's A Mind of a Killer. It's the Aaron Hernandez.
Oh,
one.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been watching the Aaron Hernandez. The former Patriots tight end.
Is that the live
it's like a docu-series thing.
Yeah,
there's some live sort of thingy stuff.
Yeah, it's but it's like it's like actors, right?
Yeah, like some. It's also like real interviews and everything too. But yeah, they have little scenes where they show like a guy, like they don't show anybody's face, but like they show like a gun like firing and stuff like that. Yeah, and I had no idea about the half of it with him. Like it's a really sad case. Like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he was definitely a sociopath and messed up, but like, you hear about his upbringing and a lot of different social factors, environmental things, and it really, and for how young he was, like I feel like it hits me more now because we were like, it was 2008-ish when that happened.
Yeah.
It really hits me how young he was now, because that's like 10 years younger than we are now. And I'm like, damn, like for him to be in that situation that young in life with a kid and stuff and with so much opportunity is so sad. Like it really is. Yeah. And you like, they get into sort of college football and sort of what that scene's like and how it affected him. And I would say it doesn't necessarily make you feel bad for him. I mean, I guess I do feel bad for him, but it's not like it basically excuses what he did, obviously, but it does give you like a bigger picture of like, oh, okay, like this guy just wasn't like a gang guy that was in the NFL. Because I feel like that was like I don't know, maybe if that's the vibe that you had, but that when that was going on, I feel like that's what was reported, sort of, which is really not true at all. Like he came from a pretty nice town in Connecticut and played for University of Florida and like all these, like I didn't know the half of it about him. So it's been interesting so far. I think we have like 20 minutes left of it.
Yeah, I think I watched that same one before, and yeah, that one's really good.
Which one were you hoping I was going to talk
so about? We watched on Monday, we watched a documentary called Buy Now.
Okay.
And it is basically about all of the different tactics that companies use to get us to buy more and more and more and more. And then the like extraordinary amount of waste that is created by these large corporations, these companies, these things that they say are recyclable but aren't really recyclable, and these false labels and all this stuff. I just thought it was very interesting. It was definitely made me open my eyes a little bit more to like how we're being kind of manipulated into continuing to just get Amazon after Amazon after Amazon delivery like every other day.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild, man. It's pretty wild. They had a former high up Amazon executive. They had a former president of Adidas. They had a former Apple employee. Yeah, so there was some big names or big people that were part of these companies that were speaking about these things. So I thought that was really interesting, especially in light of like our sponsor, like Impact Botanicals, and their mission to
the polar opposite of that.
right, to make sure you don't leave a mark. You are. You're not creating a product that's going to sit in a landfill for forever. It's like the exact opposite with a majority of these companies. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, check that out. That's on Netflix too. That's called Buy Now.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch that and be like, oh yeah, we buy from, and yeah, I'm guilty of it too. We buy a lot of stuff from Amazon. It's tough where it's like you try to support the local places sometimes, but it can be tough with price points and other things going on.
Right. Especially you got kids and stuff like that. Like you got a budget. It's like you're trying to do the best you can within that budget, and inflation's not helping. But you do the best you can do. That's all. You ready for the hypothetical?
I am so ready.
All right, buckle up. All right, Nick.
Josh.
You are in a plane crash in the Andes Mountains, not unlike those people from the movie Alive, or I suppose like the 1972 Uruguayan rugby team who experienced this situation in reality. As such, you will be forced to consume the human flesh of people who died on impact. This will be a terrible experience, but is the only way for you to survive. Fortunately, you do not know any of the victims personally. So, Nick, the question: would you rather eat a dead baby, or would you rather eat a dead elderly person? Would gender play a role in the selection process? And how much would it bother you if this meat turned out to be delicious?
Oh, jeez.
All right, first question. Dead. So either way, these people are already passed away.
Yeah.
So, baby or elderly person?
I'm gonna be honest. Like, maybe this is weird, but I feel like I don't really have a preference. I feel like if which one of them died first, and you were that hungry, like, yeah, that's probably go for it. I mean, I would think that baby would probably taste better. I'm just saying what everybody's probably thinking.
I'm thinking the same thing, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I don't know.
Now, would gender play a role in the selection process?
I don't think so. No. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see how it would. Like, if you're gonna go down that path of cannibalism, then we're here. Why does it matter?
Let's tackle these right now. So I think we're in a situation where you're doing anything you can to survive. Obviously, if you're eating human flesh, you're doing anything you can to survive. You're right. I don't think elderly person, baby, they're both going to get eaten eventually anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So, and what gender they are doesn't matter either. I mean, you obviously have a general idea. Like, I would imagine a baby is going to taste better than an elderly person. I would also imagine a woman is probably going to taste better than a man. You know what I mean? It's probably going to be less tough. The meat's going to be less tough, all that stuff. But it's either way. It's like you're doing everything you can to survive. So I don't think there's like that. There's really no choice. It really doesn't matter.
No.
But the real question is, how much would it bother you if this meat turned out to be delicious?
I think I'd probably have some sort of psychological thing going on after that. Like, I just think of it, and I think we were talking about this while we were hiking, just with the cold too. But like you've heard of like the Donner Party, right? And like the whole cast and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a Donner Party.
No, I think you're right. I think it's Donner Party.
Yeah, dude. Like, I would have to think that basically messes you up for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah.
Like, you've gone through something like that where you have to eat people. Which is, I mean, I feel like a lot of other animal species do eat they do cannibalize, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't say most of them. I don't know. I'm not a biologist, but it definitely happens in nature, where I know like males will eat like their younglings or things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would think it would probably really mess you up if you had like visions of you like cooking like a baby leg over like a spit. Like, yeah, that'd be pretty messed up.
And like you're looking
I don't know if you could,
to it because you're like, oh, that's good. I can't wait because I know it's tasty.
You get some honey mustard ready.
Oh my lord, the honey mustard. Oh my lord.
Yeah, I go back to normal society after that.
Yeah, it would be tough. I wonder if your body knows, like if you were fed human meat and and you didn't know it, like I wonder if your body knows and like things start to change in you.
I don't know.
Like, you know what I mean?
When you said that, what came to mind is like, you know how like your body will react to like different like blood, different like if it's not your right blood type. It's like I wonder if there's anything like weird that would happen like that, where it's like, oh, this is like the same kind of cells that I'm built from, or like whatever, like it knows. Yeah,
that'd be weird.
It would be strange, though. I feel like we eat a lot of different animals and stuff, and it doesn't generally affect you. I mean, I'm not a vegan, or I'm not like a carnivore or anything. I'm sure there's implications to anything you put in your body, obviously. But yeah, I don't. It's an interesting thought process whether it actually, like, you think your body, like, you'd start to like change.
Yeah.
Like regress.
Right. Maybe. I think so. Maybe it'll affect
your beard would get bushier.
You just turn into a wild man. You turn into Robin Williams when he comes back from Jumanji. What year is it?
Gosh, it's been a week.
Oh, give me some more of that delicious baby leg.
That was just a cheeseburger.
Oh, snap.
That delicious baby leg.
Good stuff, dude. Good stuff.
I'd be worried. I don't know, man. I feel like people have joked about my calves or stuff before. Like I feel like especially when I was in high school and used to work at a pizza place, and I'm like, I'd be worried that someone would just chop off my leg now.
These people are dead. You think they're gonna get that desperate? You start killing.
It's true.
What if you chopped out? You think you would eat your own? If you had to, would you eat like your own leg?
I feel like that's kind of weird.
That's like a whole nother level.
Yeah, I feel like if you're like that hungry that you're thinking about cutting off your own leg, like your body probably doesn't have enough energy to like digest anything at that point. I don't know. That's like drinking your own urine. Like, it's funny because this reminds me, like I used to watch or he's still around, but I guess
Les Bear Grylls.
No, yeah, but like Les Stroud, who's like the survivor.
Oh, the other dude. Yeah,
the guy who seems more logical and stuff. He's like, there's no reason ever to drink your own piss. Like, first of all, it's got salt in it and stuff that your body's basically releasing because it needs to, and like it usually just dehydrates you more than you probably already were. There's no reason to ever do that. Bear Grylls is just nuts.
Bear Grylls. I just remember him squeezing the water out of like
shirt, and yeah.
No, I remember he squeezed it out of like a giant turd. One time, I was like, "What are you doing, Bear? What are you doing?" It was like a giant hippo shit. Then he's just like.
That's
ridiculous.
That cannot be worth
the
risk
not good.
of like getting Giardia or like something crazy.
Not worth it, dude. I do 1 million overnight stays in the Zealand hut in 20 degrees before I squeeze the water out of some shit.
Let me squeeze out this dead beaver and get some moisture out of it. That sounds like a good idea.
Oh my lord. We're gonna find that clip, dude. We're gonna post it. Oh man! All right, dude. Anything else?
No, man. I think that's it. I got more stickers coming on the way.
Nice.
As always, reach out to us. If
you can find our stickers now in Bergen.
Yeah, I dropped off a pretty fresh, little. I was gonna say load, but that sounds weird.
Dropped a fresh load.
A fresh easy, Josh, easy. A fresh. Just back off the mic and giggle a little bit. I dropped off a fresh printing of stickers at Bergen, so you can find our nice big holographic ones and the smaller matte ones. Our friend Nick Higgins over there was kind of manning the shop when I went in over the weekend. I wanted to catch up with him after the Link 100 and say hi, and I was actually looking at some of their stuff. But yeah, I dropped off some stickers, and thanks again, Nick, for letting us play us our stickers, and thank you again, Virgin, for letting us put our stickers in there as well. Hopefully, people take them.
What an absolute stud to go right back to work too.
Yeah,
like run 100 miles.
He literally worked. I was asking him. He literally worked the next day.
Yeah, that's insane, dude. I'd be out at least a week.
And he was on his second lunch from One Love Brewery, which is probably understandable because I would imagine he's got some calories to catch up on.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome, dude. All right. Well, remember to like, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at PUDs Podcast. You can watch us on YouTube at PUDs_podcast. And until next time, bippity boppity, give me the zoppity.
Bye. PUDs Podcast was produced and recorded in Black Cat Studios by the Pud Boys. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving us a review and subscribing. Find us on social media, and we'll see you next time.